Welcome to another episode of Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends spin a wheel once a week. It chooses the horror movie and they discuss it. Today we're talking about the 1997 film I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is directed by Jim Gillespie. I'm your co-host Alec.
I'm Eric, and with us again is Joe Testa, coming in hot. You were here last week. You're back again for a hell of a movie. Welcome back, Joe.
Can't keep me away, guys.
Never.
Good to be back.
Yeah, this is the first time in the Wheel of Horror history we have a back-to-back guest. I love it, though. Couldn't think of a more appropriate guest. So, Joe, do you have a history with this movie?
Yeah, well, this isn't going to be one of those episodes where I talk about, this documentary I watched and this book I read. I mean, I think less ink has been spilled on this movie than, say, something like Night of the Living Dead. The reason I wanted to talk about this movie is, unlike a lot of the other movies, this is a movie I remember being there opening night. I remember the excitement and it was a really cool time to be a horror fan. I was like, I don't know, 14, 15 and
This might be a weird question, but what were you wearing? Do you remember? Was it
man.
anything like what these guys are wearing?
It was probably like a Stone Temple Pilots t-shirt or something.
Okay.
Flannel around the waist.
Absolutely. But yeah, I was a horror fan for years, and the landscape really changed around this time. And it was a lot of fun.
Well, Eric, what about you? You've seen this movie before, right?
Yeah, I've only seen this like once or twice. I'm honestly not like a fan of this movie, but I like it. It's a time capsule. There's no other way to describe it. It's a time capsule. It's not good. Like it doesn't really stand the test of time. But when you watch this movie, you're like, this was like the peak of 90s slasher movies. And it really did very, very well in the box office. And it's a fun ride. It's a fun ride. And looking back at it now, it's like, oh my God, like what are these guys wearing? What are these cheesy lines? It's so corny. It's like, oh man, this is how it used to be. So
Well,
yeah.
Joe, I think what you said earlier is like this is when horror was changing, and this is right after Scream, so like, and I didn't realize it's the same writer as the Scream series, Kevin Williamson. So it's like kind of riding the coattail of that, just like good-looking people solving a mystery in a small town. But I don't know. I think Scream is way better. I don't know if you had to put these two next to each other.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know you guys have talked about Scream, but you can't talk about this movie without talking about Scream. And I remember those days very clearly. I was buying Fangoria for quite a few years before Scream came out. And, it was slim pickings. There were a lot of direct-to-video horror movies. Gothic horror movies had kind of made a comeback with like Bram Stoker's Dracula and Interview with the Vampire, but not a lot that was really moving the needle. And then I remember being in the theater opening night for Scream and there wasn't much of a crowd for it.
Wow.
And I remember it was around the time I started paying attention to things like box office numbers and stuff, and Scream opened at number 5. So I thought, oh, okay, well, great movie, but like all the others, not a big success. And then it just hung around and became this like sleeper hit and made $100 million. And yeah, from there on, it was off to the races. Everything changed.
Yeah, I got a little stat for you coming off of what you just said. So it had a $17 million budget, which is it's a nice budget for a movie like this. It made $126 million globally. And as of 2019, it is still the highest grossing slasher film of all time.
Wow.
And the order it's interesting. The order is Halloween, the 2018 like sequel continuation.
Rob Zombie. Oh no,
no, 2018,
the newest
the one that
Got
goes
it.
from one. Yeah.
Got it.
Scream. Scream 2, Scream 3,
What?
Freddy vs. Jason, Texas Chainsaw from 2003, and I Know What You Did Last Summer. So this movie's up there, as a hey, this made money.
That's really surprising. That list is surprising. I never thought Scream 3 would be up there. I kind of thought that would have died down a little bit.
Oh no, that Scream trilogy, they were such events, which was so weird because like so many of those movies, so many horror movies I saw before the Scream movies, I was just sitting in empty theaters. I mean, I remember the first issue of Fangoria I bought. The cover story was Warlock the Armageddon. I don't know if you guys even know those movies, but
I do. Yeah. Wait, your grandpa? What about your grandpa? He was with you.
He was with me for Warlock as well as all of the Scream movies. But I know what you did last summer. I actually saw with my friends. Somehow we got in. It wasn't always easy back then because it was an R-rated movie, but we got in, and unlike so many of the movies I saw with him, this was a packed screening, probably sold out, with a very vocal audience, and not in an annoying way. They were all like having fun. I would imagine for a lot of them, this might have been their first horror movie. Some of them probably on the big screen. I mean, some of them probably saw Scream on VHS and said, "Oh, this looks kind of like that. Let's go check it out."
Yeah. And then, I mean, obviously you have Scream 2 also coming out this year, and then Buffy starting in 97 too. So it's like Sarah Michelle Gellar's having a great year, but also just this whole revival of slashers is kind of all happening right in 96, 97. So it is interesting, but I think you're right though, Eric. The dialogue just seems so fake
Yeah.
that it's almost. I mean, it does in 80s ones too, but I don't know what it is. Like, I have such a hard time looking at 90s ones and giving them that
Well,
same rose-colored lens I do with 80s and 70s ones, where I'm kind of just like, oh, they don't know any better.
a,
Where in this
a
one, I'm
hu-
like, they should be better.
a
So,
100%, and that's because 90s slashers and 90s horror movies are almost their own genre. It's just how they were made. The horror, like the cheesy, it's all cheesy. It's all like it's great though. It's really, like I said before, it's a time capsule. It's enjoyable to watch again.
right.
Scream 2, we watched that one earlier this year, and I was like, oh my god, like I remember this movie, like and that's one I haven't seen in like almost 20 years, I'd say. So yeah.
Right.
Kevin Williamson, even at the time, got some criticism for his dialogue because he created Dawson's Creek also. And the dialogue was usually just maybe a little too witty, and just it all sounded like it was coming from the same person. Like each character didn't exactly have their own voice. It was always the author speaking, it seemed like. And yeah, Scream, I know you did last summer, The Faculty, they all have that kind of maybe too
Yeah.
cool for school dialogue.
And
Well,
the posters too. Sorry, Eric. This was kind of like the Scream, this Faculty, Phantoms. They all just had these like, just like the pictures of these hot people like on the thing, and it's not
yeah.
as engaging for me. Where like the older horror movies had these like cool characters or just like things, an event from the movie. Where these ones are just like the faces of the actors with a cool like a title above it. So I'm like, it doesn't pull me in as much.
hmm
This is probably the worst era of movie posters. Actually, we might be living in it. I mean, actually, I don't even know if movie posters exist anymore. But
Yeah.
yeah, in the 80s and the 70s, you had those beautiful, like illustrated one sheets. Those I'm a huge fan of those.
Yeah, they were just I don't know, they were just cooler back then.
I remember when this movie was released, on the poster, it said from the creator of Scream.
There you
Yeah.
go.
And I got in an argument. Not well, it wasn't really an argument, but a kid I went to school with who worked at a movie theater, he told me it's a new Wes Craven movie. And I told him, no, it's not. And he says it says it right there on the poster from the creator of Scream. And I tried to explain to him, that it was actually the writer. And I do believe it resulted in some kind of litigation.
Mm.
I think Wes Craven was really unhappy about that, and by the time it came out on video, they changed it to from the writer of Scream.
You notice that a lot more now, where it'll say like from the producers of Wedding Crashers or from the guys that brought you this. It's never
Mhm.
from the creators of. This is the first time that you notice that?
Yeah, I think so, and it's the first time where I was probably thinking, yeah, who is the true author of a movie? I understand where the thinking comes from, that Kevin Williamson, he came up with these characters, he came up with the story, he's the creator, but a writer just writes a script. He doesn't make a movie. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Could have been characters based by Kevin Williamson, but you're right. It should have been from the writer of Scream comes this.
From someone involved with the movie Scream.
I mean, yeah, because
That's
like,
all
where
it
does it
is.
end? Yeah, it could be like from the
The-
gaffer that was
Yeah, the gaffer.
involved.
I was just thinking the same thing.
Silence of the Lambs comes, I guess like this movie though, just to like kind of delve into that a little bit. Eric, I noticed your name. The music in this movie, I
Oh
was
God.
not a fan of. I liked all of the originals. Like obviously they did a cover of Hush by Deep Purple. They did
I
the
like
cover of
that. The Hush was better than most of them, honestly. And
Well,
Hush's was in the credit scene at the end too.
Yeah, but the Summer Breeze one, I was like, "Is this
Oh,
Marilyn
that was
Manson?
horrible. That
Who
was
was that?"
horrible. Horrible
Yeah.
cover.
So there was that, and then there
Joe's
was
getting
the
upset. Joe, are you mad? Are you
Full
mad?
disclosure,
Do you like
full,
that?
full disclosure, I bought this soundtrack the
No.
weekend the movie came out. Um, not
uh,
really a fan of any of the bands. That's typo negative in the opening
oh,
credits.
okay.
Not really a fan of any of these bands, but if I liked a movie, chances are I'm going to buy the soundtrack.
Well, I think it was kind of funny. The thing that made me the most like time capsule thing is when they did like the 1 year later, and it was just like every cliche, like Van Wilder, American Pie, kind of like here we are at college, kind of like music, and then like they would go into her dorm room.
Wasn't that the same college from like American Pie? It looked like the same damn dorm, like the front of the building at least.
Well, stop.
Probably is.
But it was kind of just like such a contrast with the soundtrack of having those kind of like upbeat early 2000s, late 90s kind of like rock, and then the like cover of the 60s, 70s kind of songs that were just dark Marilyn Manson-y kind of stuff. I thought it was okay.
I'll start with this. I mean, this movie's, it's cool. It's fun to follow. They should have 100% contacted the authorities. I'll start there.
Yeah.
When they hit the guy, it's like you guys are kids. The person driving was not drinking. This person's in the middle of the road on a curvature in the dark. I mean, you're not gonna get in that much trouble. But he's like, they're gonna pin it on me. It's like we have 3 witnesses with us that will say that you're driving.
Definitely understand that argument. I see where they're coming from too. I think that's a pretty good scene.
You would throw the body in the ocean, Joe. You would do that. Damn,
if
man.
I was on the verge of graduating high school and going off to college, I think they do a pretty good job of showing it's this exciting time in their life, and then this awful thing happens to them, and then they they
could you
don't
imagine
want
the
to.
night the pageant winner just won, killed the guy the same night? Yeah, like stuff
Yeah,
like
they
that. I get that.
they
Yeah.
don't want to risk their futures. Like Ryan Phillippe thinks he's going to play for the NFL.
What team was it again? What team was it? Was it
The Cowboys?
Oof.
Yeah,
Still haven't won a Super Bowl.
yeah, he's better off. He's better off.
I mean, I guess what would happen if they did call the police though? Because they would find out because that guy didn't die, so they would be like, "So what were you doing out here?" He's like, I just actually killed my daughter's boyfriend." Or so it's like he would have got in trouble. Like it would have worked out. I think. I don't know.
It's a big coinky dink, if you ask me.
Oh, you mean the
guy they hit is like, oh, he just killed someone. It's like, oh, that's
right,
very convenient.
That always seemed really convoluted. But going back to the kids, the car is covered in booze. They have one person with them that's shit-faced. I could see where they're coming from. I mean,
honesty is the best policy, Joe. That's when you say, hey, our one drunk friend he spilt the bottle, it got all over the car.
Okay, but
honesty, Joe.
We're also looking at this from the lens of being in our 30s. They're 18.
Yeah.
They're most of them. They had to be drinking. What is Ryan Felipe just drinking the whole fucking bottle by himself?
Oh, 18-year-old Erik would have figured a different place to throw him, and where the current would pull him out easier too. I mean, definitely.
So I don't know. I guess when as the audience watching it, you're like, what are they doing? But then like if you're 18, you're drinking a little bit, you just got laid, it's a little different. I just gotta say, I'm sure you've seen it too, Joe, but this movie and Scream, they've kind of been ruined for me by Club Dread and Scary
Movie. I was gonna bring that up at some point. I brought that up in the Scream podcast too, because my brain doesn't remember if it was Scream or if it was the actual movie. Like the line in, but wait, there's more. I always thought that was in Scream, but it's not.
Yeah.
And that kind of messed me up. The Scary Movie has like a few things from this movie, like that's my girlfriend when he's like on the balcony, that's my girlfriend, like really over the top.
In the locker with the small penis.
Oh
thing,
God, I know
what are you
he's
waiting for? Like all that. There's a lot.
Son of a bitch! Like he's like punching the lock. Oh, I love it. Yeah.
I love the first 2 Scary Movies, but I've seen them only a handful of times, and like Scream movies I've seen countless times, and so I was thinking about Scary Movie a lot more during this than I am when I revisit the Scream movies.
Yeah.
You guys talked about one of your 80s crushes last time I was on.
Oh, Lar Park Lincoln.
I will say that both of the lead actresses in this movie were crushes for me in
Buffy and Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Yeah, my middle school and high school years.
You know what it is, Joe? You have eyes, so that's the
Yeah.
problem. Yeah, they're and especially in this movie, you're like, God
This
damn.
movie, this movie too, it was just like it was just cleavage city. Like they did not like let like it was just cleavage shot pan out like
Dude,
or
there
like
was one specific shot where Jennifer Love Hewitt's on the computer on the laptop, and it's like right as Sarah Michelle Gellar's about to get murdered, and it's like cutting between them. Dude, it like starts on her boobs and then just like pans up to her face. You're like, come on, guys, like
yeah,
not even.
they weren't subtle. And how old were you, Joe, when you saw this?
Probably
You
14,
didn't stand a chance.
15.
You
No.
didn't stand a chance.
They knew what they were doing. Yeah, so
You bought the soundtrack. Like they got you.
hook, line, and sinker. But you know what? Like the kills are pretty cool. I think the guy getting Max or whatever getting the hook through him and then dragged into the ice. Like that was actually
Oof.
that was pretty good.
I remember sitting in the theater, and I don't really remember exactly how this movie was advertised at the time. I knew it was some kind of thriller, obviously. And I actually read the book that this is based on.
Oh, really?
But it was like a young adult novel. Like it wasn't a horror movie, and it didn't bear much resemblance to this movie. So I didn't exactly know what I was getting into. I feel like they were kind of hedging their bets just in case Scream was a fluke. I don't feel like they were advertising this as a horror movie or a slasher movie, you know? So when that kid gets killed with the hook, I remember vividly thinking to myself, holy shit, this is a slasher movie.
Huh?
And that was such a cool feeling because slasher movies for me were things I rented from 10, 15, 20 years ago. We watched them on shitty VHS tapes. They weren't things you saw in packed theaters with actors you recognized from TV. So it was actually a really cool feeling. I remember that really well.
Yeah, that's why I love having you on, Joe, because like you do, especially with movies like this, like you have such like a personal experience with so many things.
So
So
you went into this not knowing really what it was back when you were a kid.
I knew it was some kind of thriller, and that's what they called everything. I feel like
Well,
horror
look
was.
at Cruel Intentions. Like that's kind of a thriller drama, and
Yeah,
that's the same
yeah,
kind, like the same poster. If you look at
mhm,
that poster and this poster, it's the same damn thing.
yeah.
Swapped Jennifer for Reese Witherspoon or whatever.
I think I might have thought it was some kind of stalker movie, some kind of teen thriller. Even Scream, I remember the newspaper ads when it came out. It was called the new thriller from Wes Craven. Like horror was just so dead. But then when that kid gets hit with the hook, it's like, holy shit, this is like something right out of Friday the 13th.
Oh man,
yeah,
being gaffed by a hook must suck.
yeah.
It's they do it and it's like they die right away. I'm like, oh, that must be like you punctured something, and I'm gonna bleed out very slowly over the next like 2 hours. This is a terrible way to die, if you ask me. But
I just want to talk about the killer actually, just for a second. So
yeah, let's
like,
do it.
so basically, just if I understand this correctly, there was a couple, Susie and the guy or whatever. They were dating, and then Susie killed herself, and then the boyfriend was going to kill himself too. But then the killer was the dad of Susie, and he thought, "Oh, you made my daughter kill herself, so I'm going to kill you." So then he gets hit by the car after he kills the son, and then he spends a year just plotting this horrible revenge. But he doesn't really know who the ringleader is, but he treats Jennifer Love Hewitt like she's the ringleader. She's the one that he gives all the exposition to at the end. Like, so it's what's this guy's fucking deal?
Joe, I'm gonna toss it to you.
I've never liked that whole convoluted backstory. It's probably my least favorite thing about this movie. And I also dislike when he's like toying with them.
Yeah.
Like, how does he get a body in her trunk covered in crabs and then he
Dude,
gets it cleaned up? Yeah, that stuff is
Like
is
very
trash.
clean too. That was definitely bleached or
that
something.
scene specifically, it would just be like, all right, somehow he got all the sand and crabs and everything. Just smell it. Just smell it.
Well,
It smells like
he also
crabs.
organized the tools. It looked really nice in that trunk. If you saw it, like it's
Yeah, it
good.
looked like it just got detailed. It literally looked perfect. So you're just kind of like, all right.
Yeah. Yeah, well, here's the thing. So coming off of Scream, which is 1996, you're watching this movie and you're thinking one of them's the killer, or
Mhm.
something. You get it. It wants you to feel like there's some twist coming. No, it was a different person that we didn't meet yet. So
Yeah.
it tried to do something different than Scream, where Scream was just like, oh, the twist, and there's two of them, and this one is just like, no, it's one dude, and it's just a coinky dink. You killed him when he killed somebody, and yeah.
They really point the finger hard at Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean, like what? Like he's bad timing. Yeah, but
get the poor kid.
yeah,
He's never done anything to show them that he would have been the killer except that Billy Blue bullshit. Like,
yeah. It's like just
uh,
because you guys are all going to college and I'm like not, like doesn't mean I'm gonna kill everyone. Like
well, it's also weird. They make him feel like he's the poor guy, and then you see Sarah Michelle Gellar's house and her alcoholic dad, and then you see Jennifer Love Hewitt's single mom. So I was like, wait, so they're no, who's rich except for Ryan Felipe or whatever? Like, I don't know. Everybody's kind of shitting on him. It's like, it was just weird.
and they also throw that Elsa, that other blonde girl in this, who's Veronica Vaughn from Billy Madison, Alec.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, and in she's Sonya Blade in Mortal Kombat.
Right, right. But wait, what was her purpose in this movie?
To die.
She's just another body, right?
I have a comment on
To
that.
die, yeah.
So we see that pretty great shot of the fisherman dragging her by the hook. And then he just seems to like toss her body in the bathroom. And I'm thinking back to our conversation last week with how creative Jason is with his bodies. Like Jason would have had that body like crucified on display in like 5 minutes. But the fisherman's really lacking a little creativity there. But in fairness, it's like his first night out killing. So I'll
Yeah,
cut
it's
him
like
some slack.
he's like a below average killer. Like
Yeah.
he's not like a high stakes
Yeah.
like,
It's
you
his
know.
first night too.
Yeah.
This is his big night.
This is his
So
first spree. Like he
You know
hasn't been
what?
on a killing spree.
To
exactly.
make that Mark Joe, we don't know if Jason, that could not be his first outing that we're seeing in part 2. You know, that could be like his 15th, but that's just the
Sure.
first one we're seeing. So now
Sure.
we're seeing the fisherman's
Don't get him started with the timelines and how everything's messed up with the Jason. Don't like
No,
go
but
there
you're
right now.
right. You're right. He's like, "Oh, sweetie, put some crabs on that guy's face." But most of his victims are just on ice. But also, what's he gonna do with those bodies? He didn't plan for Jennifer Love Hewitt to be on the boat, but he just has those bodies there conveniently. So it's like, was he gonna eat them? Like, what was he gonna do? Like, this guy's crazy. Is he like selling their body parts as sushi? Like, what is this guy's fucking deal?
There's a lot of issues with the fisherman, but just as an image, I like him. I think it's a striking image. The slicker, the hook, even though Candyman got there a few years before him,
Yeah.
I still think it's a striking image. Like I going in, I didn't know that there was going to be like an attempt at a new iconic killer. You know, this was like if Ghostface was the Michael Myers, the fisherman is like the Jason of the 90s, you know? This was all blowing my mind back then. You know, I could see this movie for what it is now, but I'm trying to bring you guys back to that simpler time when this stuff was all really cool.
I want to look at it through that lens too. Like,
Yeah.
I really do. I try to do that with a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
and trust me, I could look at this movie much more critically, but yeah, I mean, it's a total nostalgia piece.
Right, and one other thing I want to say from my childhood, and I used to love urban legends, like the scary stories. Like
Mhm.
they bring in the hook heavy into this one. What's the name of the one where the guy's like hanging and like hitting his head like on the roof, like the tap tap or drip drip drip? Yeah,
That's the story they tell on the beach, right?
yeah, and then there's like obviously Bloody Mary, the killer in
Mhm.
the back seat, the handkerchief. But this one is like the hook. It like
Mhm.
tries to do that story, not to do the story again, but the hook like idea of it.
I had heard that story. I don't know if you guys remember Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Yes, that's exactly what I have that book. I love
Yeah,
that book.
I grew up with those books
Yeah.
and I remember the hook story. So yeah, it's taking inspiration from those urban legends.
Yeah, and the one I know, and they go like, no, that's not the story. The one from that is two kids are making out in a car. They hear on the radio someone escaped from an asylum. They hear a bang on the side of their door. They go home, and then there's a hook in their car, and like that's
Mhm.
like
Yep.
yeah.
Mm.
So they barely narrowly escape the killer or whatever. So
Going back to that beach scene, this was written by Kevin Williamson again, and something he did really well in Scream was kind of subvert expectations and play with the cliches of slasher movies. And I think he's attempting to do that with that beach scene because it's implied that Julie, Jennifer Love Hewitt, is a virgin, but she gives it up to Freddie Prinze on the beach. And that's one of the first scenes of the movie. So I think he's right at the beginning saying, okay, all those old rules, were in post Scream rules, like even though those weren't really rules, if you look back at a lot of those old horror movies, they were more just cliches.
Yeah.
But I think he's trying to play with the genre conventions again. And one thing I kind of wish he did, and I think it would have caught a lot of people by surprise, is if Sarah Michelle Gellar lived instead of Jennifer Love Hewitt. I think that would
Like
have been a cool
kill the
twist.
main character and have her
Yes.
become the
Yep.
main character.
Yep.
Yeah, that could have been cooler.
It's like a
Could have been
reverse
cooler.
of Nightmare on Elm Street, where you think
hmm
that the blonde girl is going to be the lead. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Or
that
you
would
could
be.
do kind of like the Cabin in the Woods thing where the worst character survives, and that's the stoner or the guy with like the macaroni haircut. Like that's my girlfriend. Like he sometimes has this redeeming story at the end, which like we like connect with him, and he saves the day. And who knows?
That would have been cool though, Joe. I would have liked that.
One more thing I do appreciate about this movie is that there's not an annoying comic relief character. And if you saw I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, you have Jack Black in that movie.
Yeah, with like
Really? Okay.
dreadlocks, right?
Yeah, with dreadlocks, exactly. And I'm surprised like no studio exec said, "Hey, we need a funny character. We need like a Jamie Kennedy or something in this movie."
Yeah, you're
But
right.
I'm
I've
actually
never seen any of the sequels, but I understand why they made them because they made a lot of money. So
Mhm. Yeah,
they're
I'm just
bad. I'm guessing they're bad. I say
I,
bad.
I'm not a big fan
All right,
of.
I'll watch them all tonight.
Uh,
Yeah, I only saw the next one. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, but
okay.
there was a direct to video third movie that I skipped.
That's
What's
what I
that
was
one
gonna
called? What's that
ask.
one called?
I'll always know what you did last summer. And
Yep.
I watched a YouTube review about it, and apparently it is unwatchable trash. Like this guy, I don't Joe, have you ever heard of Dead Meat, that the channel on YouTube? He does kill counts of all horror movies.
Oh, those always come up on my recommends, but
You should watch them. You'd love them. You
Yeah,
would love them.
Joe, they're
Yeah.
fantastic. But he covered this one, and he's like, I think this is the worst horror movie I've ever seen in my life. I kind of want to see it. I don't know, just for
Mhm.
that. But it continues his story. He's like a zombie guy in this one now, so he's still alive.
Like Back from the Dead with a hook and a trench coat.
Yeah, so he's going the Jason route.
I'm waiting for the I know what you did last Arbor Day. That's what I'm waiting for. Like when you get in the holidays.
I guess Arbor Day doesn't need one. But Eric, you saw Club Dread.
Oh, I love Club Dread.
Dude,
Yeah,
Club Dread.
that was the same killer. Like it was a hook.
No,
Yeah.
no, no. It's a direct spoof of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer.
Club Dread is?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, because they go to like an island and they go on like a vacation. It's a resort.
Pleasure Island or whatever with is Bill Paxton in it?
No, no.
Damn it.
Have you
All
seen
right.
Club Dread, Joe?
Nope.
Oh, you might like
Oh.
that. You might like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a not Super Troopers. The Broken Lizard guys, the guys that did Super Troopers. This was their
Oh, okay.
second movie. And it's a spoof of I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. It's actually it's pretty funny.
It has its laughable moments. I'll say that. Where
Yeah.
it gets you.
I would have liked to seen a little more blood and gore in this movie. And again, I'm not a gore hound, but like Sarah Michelle Gellar has that great chase scene, and I feel like I'm never even sure that she got killed. Like,
We don't see it. It's off screen
right.
mostly.
Yeah, and I get it. Like these actors are, they were big stars on TV. They don't want to be they don't want to be graphically murdered in their first movie, but I think I would have liked to have seen a few more creative special effects.
Do you know what this corn syrup will do to my moisturizer? Like, not gonna mix. So
You're right though. I never really kind of thought about like these are like big TV stars. It's written by a big TV writer sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where I guess back in the 80s it kind of would have been unknowns. Like just
100%.
Well, maybe with Geller, they like she had a clause in her contract, like she doesn't get killed on screen. So if there's a big second movie and her contracts work out before Buffy, like maybe she'll be in the sequel.
Well, you do see her corpse in the ice later.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'm an idiot.
But I think I remember hearing that the scene where she gets her hair chopped off was supposed to be much more severe. Like in the movie, it's really just a haircut. I think in the script it was supposed to like go down to the scalp. Obviously they couldn't shave her head, and I think the bald cap looked weird, so they just went with like he cut her a bob.
Oh my god. Yeah, it's really not that bad. It's like, okay, man. And then you put some lipstick on her mirror. You're like, okay.
I got you. It's like I'm just gonna fix my hair now. Like
the one thing that actually did kind of surprise me was when I keep butchering his last name, but Ryan Felipe, when he gets hit by that car, I actually didn't think that was gonna happen. I thought they were gonna back up and like just scare him, but I was like, oh shit. He actually hit him. Like, wow, that actually surprised me. I gotta say that happened pretty early in the movie too.
And if I could say one more thing about Jennifer Love Hewitt and the ending of this movie, I was really surprised at how kind of useless she is in the climax of this movie. Usually, in most horror movies, that's when the final girl kind of like steps up and becomes a fighter and takes on the killer. She's pretty useless and leaves most of the fighting to Freddie Prinze, but I guess you got to leave him something to do too.
Oh, him coming back at the end, I was like, come on. Like he got
Yeah,
caught in
yeah.
like the tuna line, which is like, why is that even running or whatever? And then he climbs up there. Yeah. Also, the thing that he swings at him, it's like how that's so convenient that that's there and perfectly like can hit him. It's like, come on.
True. Very true.
But you're right, Joe. That's yeah. All she does is just scream, and the ice thing. It's like he's just gonna open the door, and all the ice will spill on the floor in the other room, and then we'll just climb in. It's like, what are you doing? Well, Eric, you got any last minute thoughts?
Just it's fun to watch again. It's a time capsule. That's what I'll end with.
All right. What do you say? Spin that wheel.
I think it's about time to spin that wheel. Okay, spinning. Spinning! Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 2003 remake.
Awesome. We definitely have a guess for that. I don't know who it is.
I don't know either, and I'm going to say this. I've never seen this movie.
Ooh, exciting. Joe, have you
I
seen
know
this one?
Jessica Biel's in it, and that's about it.
Oh yeah, I saw it in theaters, but I hate to be snobby. I'm an old school Texas Chainsaw Massacre guy.
Oh,
I'm sure I will be too.
absolutely. There's not even a question in my mind. Well, awesome. Joe, thank you so much again. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
And don't forget, so that one comes out next Monday, and this Thursday we have Terminator 2 for Sci-Fi Summer.
Nice.
Can't forget. All right.
And we'll see everybody next Monday for Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003.
Woo!